Okay, so welcome to the first episode of this new thing I'm trying, the podcast, the Sino-American lens, where I'll be talking about like the Americans' politics and stories through the perspective of a 13-year-old Chinese kid living in China. And for the first episode, I'm going to talk about the poll that's going to happen November 5th, Trump versus Harris, who's going to win. It seemed to be a perfect time to be talking about this. Elections for all the states have just opened up. So it seems to be a perfect time to get into this. And joining me today is my mentor, William.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, everybody. It's nice to meet you all. My name is William, and I've been working with Austin for a long time. And, when I heard he was doing this podcast, I really wanted to be his first guest, mostly because, as an American living in China for many years, I often find myself, pretty out of touch with what's happening in America. And with work and everything, it's been very hard to find the time to keep up with things. And with this election coming up soon, I thought this would be a good chance for Austin to kind of teach me some things about what's been going on. And it'd be a good chance for me to, learn a little bit and hear a different perspective than what I might normally hear on the news. Yeah. So, Austin, what is going to be our first topic today?
So our first topic is going to be the current polls that have been happening between Harris and Trump, and how Trump has somewhat steadily climbed up from Harris's at one point like 5% lead in polls. Though polls can sometimes be a bit inaccurate. Harris has been leading since August, and this is the first time since August that Trump has tied Harris at 49%. They've been like deadlocked at 48%, according to Times Sino poll, at least Friday. There's like a 2% error, so it could be slightly skewed, but that's around what's happening right now. And earlier this year, maybe like around August, September, Harris was leading by up to 5%. So that's kind of feels like it's kind of like an overtaking maybe of Trump, where Trump has slowly edged up to Harris, and this seems to be like a turning point potentially for Trump to maybe win this election. Personally, I don't know. It's always been very close. Always been, like I said, the max was like 5%. That means nothing with a 2% margin of error. So it's very, very close right now. Other polls have said that Harris at one point led by 3%. Harris is leading by 3%. So polls are very, very flimsy right now, but it's very, very close.
Okay. What can you tell me a little bit about what do you think has led to such a close race, and what do you think maybe led to this turning point that you were talking about?
I think it's mainly like Trump's like swing states, where there's definitely going to be Democratic Republican states that are kind of set already, but like this year especially, there's like 7 swing states, and one of them being Pennsylvania. They have 19 electoral college votes. That's a lot. So I think Trump kind of honing in on that. Also in Arizona, like honing on Arizona and North Carolina, like kind of push him over the edge. Right now, the main 2 things that Trump has are Arizona and North Carolina. And what has happened is that due to Arizona's like, at this point, they're concerned about 2 things, right? They're concerned about immigration and they're concerned about abortion. Immigration, in 2021, Biden let Harris deal with the problems of immigration. It was a disaster. Harris led to the most immigration numbers in the world, which is crazy, and Trump is 100% used that to gain voters. For abortion, though, Harris has been more publicly spoken about abortion. She's always been into like women's rights, and I think that's kind of swayed a bit of the abortion things. Trump has always been anti-abortion, but now has become a bit more neutral, which has definitely helped him in Arizona. And yeah, that along with North Carolina. While North Carolina it has 16 votes, and it used to be like a Republican state. Now it's kind of in a swing state because over the last 2 years, Democrats have won a bit, so it's kind of very close now. The thing is with them is that they go from population. What has happened is that they've had a 5.6 increase in population. that's like the 10th highest in the nation. And the majority of this, I think around 90% of them, of the newcomers are like Black and Latinos, and they heavily sway to Harris. However, even after that, the majority is still like white, middle-aged to older white people. So they kind of sway to Trump a bit more. I think Trump has North Carolina and Arizona kind of on lock right now because the immigration problem is still swayed more to Trump than Harris. And that's the thing North Carolinians have voted as the most significant problem. I think one third of people in North Carolina have voted for this. So I think Trump has those two on lock right now. However, I think Harris, she kind of, like the reason she was winning was due to her like hopes of Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Especially Pennsylvania has 19 electoral votes. That's like that's the largest of all swing states. So because of this, she's always been the race.
Okay. Well, what do you think is what do you think voters should pay attention to, or anybody who's interested should pay attention to with in the coming up days before the actual voting?
I think it's to kind of just like focus in on the parties and the points they currently have. Like if you've like around 5.6% of people I know are undecided. If you're undecided, you have to like just figure out what you want the country to be shaped like. For example, Democrats, they're always gonna be yeah. If you're gonna vote for Democrats, if you want like a more, I think the main thing is economy, right? If you want like a better economy overall, I think most people have thought that Trump has had a better economy in 2016. Well, that's like it's kind of true. The Biden's like prices and Biden's like presidential reign has kind of been affected largely by COVID, and this kind of made his like overall economy drop a lot more significantly than it probably should have. Like Trump right now is constantly saying that how the economy was horrible during Biden's reign under Harris and Biden's watch, but in reality, first of all, it's heavily skewed. Second of all, the economy now is doing a lot better than it was pre-pandemic. I think that's one of the things you should clearly look for. Personally, I think we've seen how both of these people are going to act. Harris as vice president, Trump as president. These two people, you have to kind of just like you kind of have to just look at these two people and wonder which people do you trust more, basically.
Okay. All right. Well, now, it would be really good to hear a little bit about like what are these two people all about for those people who haven't been paying attention to their previous roles so far.
Okay, so Trump. First of all, was born very extremely rich. He was born in uh, he was born in Jersey with his father, and his father built this crazy real estate business that basically Trump grew up extremely rich. I think Trump's main like people that he's gonna sway to is like younger white Americans, where it's just kind of he's gonna have this on lock. For Harris, it's gonna be pretty obvious. It's gonna be towards more women, probably due to her like pro-abortion ideals, and Black and Latinos, as he's always said that she's part of this. I think those two are the main things. Trump growing up rich, he tries to appeal to the public in a way that's like, oh, he's just like the rest of us, but eventually people are gonna realize that there's a very clear difference between these two people.
Okay. Um, all right. And then, so what do you think are things that voters should be considering in regards to their past performances?
Huh. Okay, so I think a clear indicator of this, of like the two things, is the debate that happened between these two. So we all know what kind of happened, the basic things that happened. It was a mess. Harris, I wouldn't say Harris even won. I would just say Trump kind of lost the debate. He reacted to Harris's like slight jabs and reacted in a very Trump-like manner where he kind of, after the debate, he was very persistent on him actually winning and him not wanting a second one. However, in that thing, there was lots of points that can be uncovered after all the drama. So first of all, for the economy, Harris opened the debate by attacking like Trump's economic policies and saying that like his tariffs like are basically just middle class taxes, and she accused him of basically leaving behind the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. And Trump kind of countered by saying that the current administration under her and Biden, like handling of inflation is really bad for every class in America. And he said that Harris has actually ruined the economy. Neither of them really responded or like stated their policies that much during this debate, but you can clearly see the jobs they're taking. And then for abortion, that it's clearly brought up. Abortion was a very clear topic. Harris condemned Trump for his role in supporting the Supreme Court, who like eventually overruled uh, Roe, which basically led to states determining if they want abortion or not. And Harris emphasized the point that of basically women's freedom, and I think she appealed to a lot more people this way. And then immigration, same thing that happened before. Harris obviously had to deal with this in her last campaign with Biden. Trump made, but however, Trump made controversial statements about this with like uh, the immigrants apparently eating the pets of the people in America. This kind of led him to like the madness that kind of ensued. Harris obviously dismissed these claims, saying that's just not true. She doesn't. And then eventually got to like legal issues and accountability. Harris frequently cited Trump's legal troubles, especially during his like 2021 riot against like Georgia's voters, where he wanted 11,000 more votes and he didn't get that. Trump was very defensive, claiming that he was being persecuted politically and suggested that like the charges were fabricated by the Democrats, which feels very, it felt very reacting. It felt like he was trying to defend himself. And there wasn't really anything he pointed out at Harris. At the end of it all, you could clearly see that like Harris was slowly taking jabs at Trump. Most clear example of this was her mentioning like Trump's rallies, which they described as exhausting and boring, and saying that people left his rallies way before they ended. Trump seemed to be very annoyed at this, and he started to become very defensive. At the end of the debate, I think most people could clearly tell that Trump did lose, but he still ended up being very defensive. I think that kind of shows his character as a president and a leader. So personally, I would vote Harris right now. Trump, I love Trump the idea. Trump the person seems to be not the most likable person or the most suitable person to be president.
All right. Well, I've heard a lot of people say that this might be one of the most important elections in recent memory. Why is this election so important?
Oh, well, the first thing is it's quite obvious. Harris is running, and she can be the first woman president ever to. She can be the first woman to be president of the United States. This also is kind of awkward because it's like Trump Harris. This kind of signifies like a turning point in American politics, where last year a Biden Trump thing, or even in 2016, it felt very weird on how the election results came to be. I think that, yeah, I think Harris, it's gonna be really important, especially this year, because the amount, like for example, one of the main things is like how it will affect our future. Trump is nearing 80; he's extremely old. If he's gonna be like our president, this it could lead to like significant problems that could affect the entire economy of the US.
Okay. Well, considering the importance of this election to people in the US, In what ways do you think this election could be important for those overseas, whether it's people from different countries or expats living overseas?
So they're like first of all, Trump and Harris have very different like foreign policies. Yeah, especially in the debate, in the debate they addressed that foreign policies regarding Russia, Ukraine, and Harris accused Trump of being too lenient toward Russia and Putin, and she kind of warned the public that if Trump was elected again, Russia might continue to attack Ukraine. And Trump claimed that he wanted peace, but you could still tell that he still had like more positive relationship with Putin, and it felt it felt like if Trump was president, his potential candidates would be things like Russia or like places like that. At least from what I can tell, I think that I think Harris definitely was. I think that Harris hasn't explicitly said things like what exactly she'll support, but it's very up in the air, especially for Harris.
Okay. So how do you envision the results of this election like impacting maybe you personally or impacting others abroad?
I mean, for like people study in China, study in different places, this election, I think due to like my current situation, the outcome of it won't matter as much as like people who live actually like the working class in America. But I think depending on whoever wins, it will affect like schooling and potential taxes that potential like financial struggles that maybe I could face or maybe a few other people in my situation could face, especially with many of us moving to America. I think right now as a kid, I won't be affected as much because well, I'm a kid. But like 4 years from now, when like the presidency ends, that's when I'll really think about and really face the effects of the election.
Okay. Well, you've already talked about a lot of things that we should be paying attention to, right? Or but what's something that people aren't paying attention to during this election that you feel could be very important in the days up to come?
I think you should really watch out for, I think, two states, Georgia, Michigan, because these two states are the ones that if Trump or Harris have an edge toward, that might be the deciding factor on who wins. Like Harris hopes for Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Everyone here is kind of known for this, and they're all considered more blue wall states. But Trump's support for like these states have definitely increased. However, the unpredictables are still definitely Michigan and Georgia. If you want to try to predict whoever will win, watch out for these two states because these two states are most up in the air.
So, between Georgia and Michigan, can you kind of tell us a little bit about the history of the voting in these two states and how and why it's become so contentious over the past few years and why it's so contentious now?
Okay, so first of all, Georgia. It was historically a red state until Biden won 2020. And the main thing with this is that it's now kind of up in the air after Biden won 2020. The main thing with this is that it's the state with the most African Americans, and its black voter turnout is very significant. Fourth, and the thing with this is that while it's typically like a red state, a fourth of the population is bent on preserving democracy, which really makes it kind of unpredictable. The rest of 24% is on inflation, 24% is on immigration. So these two things seem to be mainly supported for Trump. Also, this is the place where it led to Capitol riots in 2021. Trump gave like a phone call to the governor of Georgia. He asked for 21,000 votes, for 11,000 votes, and he eventually gave a speech to the people in Georgia. This led to Capitol riots, and he's actually arrested due to conspiracy of overthrowing like democracy and the votes. And even though the settlement is likely not going to be settled, this could have a large effect on like the Georgia's population and how it's so up in the air right now. And what else was there? Oh yeah, sorry. And for Michigan. So Michigan, its thing with Michigan is it has the most Arabs in America. It's mainly democratic, but in 2016 Trump did win, and in 2020 Biden won very, very narrowly. And the thing is, the war in Gaza, many Arabs and young voters don't like how Biden handled it, and this kind of translated over to Harris. And now, even though it's considered to be a democratic state, many people are switching over to Trump because of this. Also, the one argument for Biden or for Harris's thing is of 2023, and in September, Harris did join striking automobile workers, and this led to most of the population there, of most of the workers there, backing Harris. Trump's party is also trying to do this, but to a lesser extent. So even though it's considered to be a blue state, it's very up the air as well.
Okay. All right. Well, it seems like it's been a very eventful election cycle so far. With it's still very much up in the air. But can you kind of summarize some of the key events that have happened up until now?
Okay, so key events. That's well, the first key event, obviously, the presidential debate, Trump versus Harris. Trump, it was a disaster for Trump. Uh, but even though it was a disaster for Trump, Harris didn't really capitalize, as she didn't really list any of her points. She kind of just let Trump lose. She didn't really win it herself. So after that, I think it's definitely the rallies. I think Harris's first rally was in Milwaukee, where she really tried to like get that state in. This, along with her vice president being the governor of Minnesota, they kind of have controlled like the northern, like the northern region within Minnesota, upper northern region. And that has a lot of electoral votes. That's always been very key in deciding who wins the election. So that's kind of important for Harris. For Trump, I think the main thing for Trump is that Trump has softened his voice towards certain topics like abortion, not really immigration, but he's he's like he's focused on immigration more, but he's not as extreme as he was before. He's softened his personality just a tad bit, and I think his more neutrality with like topics that Harris is very passionate about, like abortion. I'll keep mentioning that. I think this will lead him to having a lot more votes than he might normally have. I think the most important thing to look out for is definitely swing states, Georgia, Michigan. If Trump's able to get Nevada, Pennsylvania, or Wisconsin, especially if it's able to get Pennsylvania, especially, Harris's hopes for winning might be very, very small. Yeah.
All right. Well, to kind of start wrapping it up, what do you think, or why do you think it's so important for young people like you to be paying attention to what's happening in politics and the world right now?
Well, if for example, right now I'm 13, right? I might be considered young by like most metrics, but like in like 4 years, I'm gonna be 18, and in 3 more, I'm gonna be like a full-fledged adult, basically. At that time, I'll be able to basically, I'll be very involved in the economy and the nation I want to grow up in. So if you're like a teenager, right, you should very much at least think about it, or at least look into it to see the future of whatever nation you want to live in. I think it's very important to understand what your future might look like, even if it's on a more global scale. I think it's very important for us to understand the situation in which we're going to be living in. And I think that's really important for everyone, basically.
Okay. And so to end off, can you kind of summarize what are some key takeaways that people should leave this leave this podcast with after their listen?
Basically, Trump seems to be catching up just a tiny bit, according to some polls. They might key seven swing states: Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Arizona. Seven swing states. These will determine the outcome of the election. Whichever elective gets these votes will most definitely win. Trump has two unlocked. Harris has a few unlocked, but it's very up in the air. If Trump gets Pennsylvania, the election's practically over already. So watch out for that. These are like my takes. These are my takeaways. This is like my perspective on the first episode of this podcast. Thank you guys for watching and listening.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody.